Welcome, everyone, to this most amazing gathering of crones, hags, and elder wise women of power. We are gathering so that we can investigate, explore together this rich time of our life. We can really unearth the different elements of wisdom that we carry together or individually. We can celebrate all that we bring to our lives, to the lives of those around us, to our community, to the world, to the earth. We are truly magnificent beings, and this can be such a powerful time of our life, and it can be a very long time of our life for lots of us. So let's really enjoy it. I'm Alison Palmer. I am your host, and today I am absolutely delighted to be speaking with Helene Van Manen. Now, you can read Helene's bio underneath here, and then you will really understand, all the work that she does in the world and the wisdom that she has to share with us. And that said, I'm going to tell you a little bit about her, but do read that because I'm not going to say it all. So Helene has worked as a full-time professional coach for a very long time, since 1999. And she actually specializes in training women coaches to lead retreats, which is just so amazing because we all love retreats, don't we? She is also a green grandmother, and her work or her passion as a green grandmother is to help us to educate us or to coach us to really explore and embrace our place as grandmother. Isn't that amazing? And we're going to be talking about that, becoming a green grandmother. So welcome, Helene.
I thank you so much for having me today, Alison.
I'm so delighted that you're here, and I absolutely love this topic. As soon as I found you and knew that you were doing this work, something just went, oh yes, that sounds just perfect. And I know, that's not all that you do. You are a grandmother yourself. You're also a birth activist. You are an executive coach. As I said, you train women to run retreats, to create and run retreats, which is amazing. And you are a green grandmother. So let's start off with I would love to know what that actually means to be a green grandmother.
Are you a grandmother, Alison?
I'm not, no.
Okay. Okay, I am. So happy to talk about green grandmothering. Well, I think that the combination of that word green and grandmother indicates, I would hope, to people that I meet that I consider myself to be a green woman, somebody that is invested in the advancing civilization of living healthy on the planet, contributing to the healing of the world, which is what I want to do in my life, whether I was ever a grandmother or not. I started doing this when I was a young woman as a birth activist, a birth educator, a doula in the early days. And then that just carried through with all of my work. But the role of grandmother, we read a lot. We read these studies, people who have a connection to their grandmother are healthier, and grandmothers can play a significant role in the education of children. And, tell me about your grandmother. And let's just start there, Alison. Did you have a grandmother that you think of when I say grandmother?
Well, I have a curious situation in my family in that I kind of have three grandmothers.
Ah,
Yeah. Um, but one of them who was a birth grandmother, a maternal grandmother, I didn't know she was my grandmother until she died.
mm,
Because my mother was fostered from birth.
mm,
So I had another grandmother who was very present in my early childhood, but I don't have much memory of her either. I have very few memories of the grandmother I said initially, but I did name my daughter after her because I wanted to pull that
Ah,
energy, that love back in. But the grandmother that I do remember was my dad's mother, and she was called Kathleen, and she was, oh my goodness, she was just very working class. There's photographs of her sort of stubbornly smoking or at the beach in knitted swimming costumes that sort of just dragged down and showed everything. And she's just like so cheeky. She was always funny. She was always a daredevil kind of person. I think what I love about her is she flaunted um, the rules. That's what I love about her. So in every
yeah,
way, so
yeah. So everything you just told me just embodies everything. When I talk to people about grandmothering, people will say to me, "Oh, my grandmother's dead," and I'm like, "No, your grandmother's alive inside of you." And then people will say, "Well, that was my aunt, your grandma Ann." And I asked a young man in a coffee shop the other day because my name, when I give my name to get coffee or to be called out in a restaurant, is I always say my name is Grandma. And they're like, oh, okay. So then I say, because they usually look up at me when I say grandma. And then I go, but if you'd like to call me Superwoman, you could call me that, you know. So like I said, just call out. I want my name called out, Grandma. And then when I do that, of course, all these women look up, right? So it's like we all know who we are then, as soon as they say that. And then sometimes they'll laugh and I'll say, okay, call me Grandma Superwoman if you want. And I love it when they yell out Grandma Superwoman and then. I go get my coffee. They're just loving that. But the young man that gave me my coffee or took my order the other day, he said, I had two grandmas and they were both dead. And I said, okay. And I said, which was your favorite? And he was like, oh. And he said, well, Grandma Ann. And I said, why was she your favorite? And he goes, because she loved me so much. And then I said to him, so now we're getting along here. I'm in line, right? But everybody seems like they're doing okay. Tell me how she loved you. How do you know she loved you? And then he told me all about when he was 12 and nobody understood him. Like he embodied everything about grandmothering that we would all want to be. So in so many ways, I'm a student of grandmothering, parenting. And I find that so many women that I talk to, especially in the dominant culture, they don't know who they're going to be as grandmothers. Because here's the thing is when we become grandmothers, we can be whoever we want. It's an archetype that we create within ourselves. So, what kind of a grandmother do you want to be? So for me, being an earth activist, being a woman whose whole work, my whole career has centered on empowering women to take better care of themselves, to acknowledge themselves, to be successful and prosperous and find their voice. That was what I embodied in who I wanted to be as grandmother. It's really easy for me because I love children so much. And I think a lot of women don't as easily connect with children, even if they've had their own. But when we have grandchildren, we have this second opportunity to show up differently for the significant children in our lives. A lot of times, and I was a 19-year-old mom, and so I think I had a blast with my children, but I was busy, you know, and I had a career. I was doing things and, I didn't ever felt like I spent enough time with them. Although looking back now, I think I did spend a lot of time with them. I read to them. I created art with them. I spent time outdoors with them. But when you have the grandkids, it's totally different because you're a little bit older. Hopefully you're bringing in the wisdom that the world's teaching you and your life's teaching you.
Mhm.
And then you have these little people that just adore you. And they'll do anything with you and for you because you're giving them 100% of your attention.
Yeah.
And their parents can't give them 100% of their attention. They're busy. They're doing other things. But as a grandmother, the world stopped when they came to me because I just would do anything with them and for them and whatever they liked. And then, of course, whatever I liked, they totally loved. And so I had a great chance to like have great conversations with them. And I'm very happy to say I have watched 2 movies in my whole life with my grandchildren. I never turned that TV on when they came to my house. But we did watch The Sound of Music together. And we had a very good talk about World War II and Nazis, which today has continued our conversation in our crumbling American democracy. My grandchildren, Scarlett, named for my mother, and Jude, who's Jude James, named for his grandfather. They're 19 and 21 now, and they are very willing to talk about what's happening in world events. But Sound of Music, early years, got a chance to talk to them about that then. And then I watched another movie with them that they liked, which I can't really remember, but I never did that. I never took them to the movies. I wanted to engage them.
Yeah.
I wanted to create art with them. I wanted to play with them. And that's what we did. And as a result of that, we got to thrift. That was a big thing I did is we don't have to buy new stuff. So we go to all the thrift stores. We buy all our art supplies there. We take everything back and recycle it. Both my kids are thrifters now. They've never been into, as young adults, to the big, expensive, fancy, dominant clothing thing. I had a chance to share my values about what was important to me on the planet, and they were receptive.
There's so many things in what you've just shared that were coming to me as you were talking. I mean, the last thing about sharing our values, that's just so incredibly revolutionary. And perhaps it's something that, we tend not to shine the light on the importance of that. Because like you rightly said, parents are often so busy working or if they're stay-at-home mums, they've probably got just so much to do and to organize within all of that, and maybe even homeschooling. It just is like a very intense time to be a parent. And we can offer as grandparents or as grandmothers, or the archetype of grandmother, if we don't have our own grandchildren, we can actually be present, showing up, expressing different values, not as I need to tell you this kind of thing, but being it and sharing and exploring and being curious together. I mean, that's so important. And like I said, quite revolutionary. The other 2 things I wanted to say, because I need to say them. One is that the reminder as you were talking, because when we think of being grandmothers, or we think of the notion of grandmothers, we often just think of tiny grandchildren, little grandchildren, not the fact that they actually get older and then become adults and things like that. So the grandmother archetype or the grandmother, biological grandmother we have great capacity to engage with youngsters at very different ages and stages of their development. And just to remember that. And then the last thing that came up is, that some women will never be grandchildren, be grandparents, grandmothers. And that might be because they've chosen to, it might be through circumstance, who knows? We never actually know how we're going to turn out in our life. And so I just wondered if you could just talk a little bit to that about, to that the grandmother, being a green grandmother, doesn't necessarily have to be with your grandchildren, although obviously
Right. Oh,
can.
I would be happy to talk about that. And you touched on a couple other things I wanted to touch on. First of all, just going back to my experience. So I have, my grandchildren have fabulous parents, and their parents just did so much with them. They read to them. They're both scientists. We're a whole family of foodies. We're all interested in different food systems. Um, I was so lucky always when I got my grandkids because they were so smart. Because that household that they grew up in was like, both my daughter and son-in-law, amazing, amazing, intuitive parents and smart parents. So I was always said that, I got the golden eggs. They'd hand me the golden eggs. The little Buddhas came through my door all the time and then came and taught me all this stuff that they were learning at their house. So that was wonderful. Plus, I had really lovely co-grandmother. So my son-in-law's mother um, was always very present for them, even though she lived at a distance. Something I didn't tell you is that I think every grandmother should have a grandmother name. So many women, and this is important to touch on, so many women, I became a grandma when I was 44. I still had my periods, and I could have had another baby for quite a few years after that. In fact, I remember going to the doctor, and he said, "Would you, at my annual appointment, would you like to have one more?" And I said, "One more what?" And he's like, "One more baby." And I said, "Oh no, my daughter just had two of them for me. I don't want to do that again, right?" But I was a very young grandma, and so I was proud to be a grandma. Like, I wanted to create that. So many women I know are like, "I am too young to be a grandma." They don't think that they think of the old archetype of the frumpy woman in the house dress, maybe smoking the cigarette, who isn't very healthy, has the creaky bones. My grandchildren knew that I was like, their healthy, fit grandma who backpacked, you know, who ran a business, a big business, they was a social activist, was a community leader, was, you know, very involved in a lot of things. So it's a whole different archetype than being the little old grandma that just sits in a corner and knits.
Yeah. Yes.
And so I say that on this topic because I really want um, I really want women to start to embrace who they are as they become grandmothers and see what an honor this is. To become a grandmother is an honor. And also, if you, as you said, if you don't have your own grandchildren, you can adopt grandchildren. There are children everywhere. I mean, I feel like I've always felt this way. I'm everybody's mother and everybody's grandchild. The Buddha said, at some point in our lives, we will all be mothers to each other, which is so true, right? So, when you're somewhere and there's kids, you're their mom, right? They're your kids. Who wouldn't help a kid? Who wouldn't? Right. So if you have some children in your life, you can ask to be an honorary grandmother. You can ask to play a role. And it doesn't have to be that you have to be the everything grandma for that child, but maybe, there's some need there that you can fulfill. Doesn't mean you have to babysit all the time. If you don't want it, right? You can do it differently. I was touching on the fact that, so my name is Grandmother Wolverine. Best darn grandma you've ever seen. I have a theme song and everything, which I'm very proud of. And then my co-grandmother is Grandmother Lynx. So we call each other Lynx and Grandma and Wolverine. And my grandkids who are adults, they call me Grandma now, but they know I'm Grandma Wolverine. And I have a whole story about how I got my grandmother name. And there's a lot of mythology that I bring into my grandmothering with them. And then now, of course, I tell them the stories of when they were little, some of which they don't remember because it was before they have memory. And so we've grown the mythology of our grandmothering with them, which is totally fun, totally wonderful.
Wow, I love this. I've never heard anybody do that before, but what a wonderful thing to do because you can bring in. So share with us a little bit about, your prompting to call yourself, or however that happened that you became Grandma Wolverine, because it seems to be a very powerful way of passing on wisdom.
Well, are you begging me to tell you the story of how I got my name?
Yes.
I'm a storyteller. I'm a storyteller. So open up my storytelling bag. So one day I heard that I was going to become a grandmother. And so I went outside and I talked to Mother Nature. And I said to her, okay, okay, what's my name going to be? And she said, oh, well, would you like to be, what name would you like to be? And I said, oh, well, I would love to be Grandmother Honey Bear. It would be so nice for them to call me Honey all the time, right? I love that. And she said, okay. And she said, well, in order to get that name, that you would have to wrestle a bear. And I'm like, I would have to wrestle a bear. She said, you have to earn that name. I'm like, oh my gosh, exactly. That face was what I was like. I live in Colorado. I have bears in my yard. I do. I saw one a few days ago. I have great respect for the bear. I'm like, well, there's no way I'm wrestling a bear to the ground. She said, we have to wrestle it. You have to pin it. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to do it. So she said, okay. I said, well, what's my other options? And she said, well, would you like to be Grandmother Lion? And I'm like, would I have to wrestle a lion, a mountain lion? And I've seen mountain lions too. And she said, and I was like, no way. I'm more scared of the mountain lion than I am of the bear, honestly. Just don't trust those big cats, right? And she said, well, there's raccoons. I'm like, oh, I don't like raccoons that much. And she said, there's squirrels. I'm like, I don't like squirrels. I want to be grandmother squirrel. And she's like, well, how about grandmother deer? I'm like, I don't, deer are they're sweet, but I don't want to be a deer. I don't want to be called deer all the time, right? And she said, well, what about the Wolverine? And I had a little story with my son about Wolverines when he was little, and I'm like, I don't know. The Wolverine, is pretty, pretty strong. She said, well, the Wolverine commands respect. But the Wolverine is so sweet with her young little babies. And I'm like, I kind of like that. And so the story has it that I wrestled the Wolverine and I got my name.
I love it. I love it. Wow, that's to me that is really green grandmothering because you went out and you spoke with nature and listened to what she was saying. I was feeling into I would like to be grandmother hedgehog, but that just
I'm a hedgehog. I but you know what? Well, you just get out there and wrestle a little hedgehog. And Alison, that is your new name.
what struck me as well from your sharing is how like you said you became a grandmother at 44. So we in the Crones circles that I do here, I tend to say, oh well, let's take this from menopause onwards as an approximate sort of starting time for this crone period. And what you've rightly reminded us is that we tend to think of grandmother. We still, I feel, have this notion of grandmother, as you said, as being this sort of end of life sort of caricature of an old woman who my image is not, smoking a cigarette and stuff. She's sitting by the fire. It's a stereotypical one, knitting with a big rosy face, and she's quite plump, and she's, beaming love and nourishment to her grandchildren who are playing at her feet. And but it's always like far, 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 like maybe she's 88 or something like that, and her grandchildren are 5, so doesn't work. But
Right.
yeah, so it's great because you're reminding us, hey, grandmother is not an age. It's not this stereotype that we think of, whatever that is for us, that we've developed through, I don't know, stories, fairy stories, or whatever, fairy tales. But it is, or like Baba Yaga, perhaps like an evil old witch grandmother, or we've got loads and loads of stories we could go into. But it actually is something that can happen. It just, we can, like if we're biological grandmother, then it's just going to happen at whatever age. And if we're not a biological grandmother, maybe it speaks to us at some point, that that desire to step into or acknowledge that possibility, that role, that energy, that archetype within us, the grandmother archetype. In fact, I'm thinking the grandmother archetype is something that I don't actually discuss very much. And I've kind of pushed it aside, I think. And so it's really valuable that you're reminding us that it can happen to us really very young. I had a friend who, now I remember, she became a grandmother at 40 and then had her last child when she herself was, I think, 41. So
Yeah. Right. You're reminding me of one of my teachers, who's the herbalist, Susan Weed. I love her. She says, that we are living in a day when we need to encourage women to, no matter if they are maiden, the 3 archetypes of the maiden, the mother, and the crone. She says that women need to embrace their inner crone as soon as they can, because the world right now needs women who have a voice, who tap into their wisdom. She said, you're not necessarily going to be any wiser at 50 than you are 30. You'll have more life experience. You may have had more pain and suffering, but the wisdom within you can be accessed at the earliest age. I mean, I've met women who are, myself, I got married at 17. Yeah, to my teenage boyfriend. Yeah, we just had our 49th winter together. Yes. So at 17, I had some wisdom. I was young and stupid in a lot of ways, but I was also wise in a lot of ways because I knew what I needed to do for myself.
yeah.
17, I claimed my power and I knew what I needed to do. And so Susan Weed says we cannot wait to embrace our inner crone. So I'll take that a step further and say, we cannot wait to embrace and cultivate. And that's one thing I think I've done. I know my co-grandmother, Grandmother Lynx, is such a beautiful grandmother. And she and I have cultivated our inner grandmothers. And we've done that now for over 20 years.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, you're so right. So tell us a little bit more about green grandmothering, because you say you're an earth activist. So tell us a little bit more about that aspect and how
Well,
you encourage others to find that within themselves.
I have to tell you, I was thinking about this because I knew we were going to discuss this.
Mhm.
Um, I'm outraged at so much that's happening in the world. And you know, everything that we're all dealing with, the consumerism, um, the lack of opportunity that people have. to get educated, to do the things that they want to do. Um, the embrace of arts, the embrace of sciences, all of these things. And so my activities as a grandmother have always been centered around those things. I used to pay my grandchildren to memorize poetry because I know when they're young, they memorize so easier than me. I try to memorize a poem now and it's just harder, right? When they're little, they memorize them. And then when they were about 12 and 14, I used to give them like $5 to memorize a poem, right? And then when they were like 12 and 14, I upped the ante one summer and I said, if you memorize a poem, I'll give you $25 each. And they were like, oh, that was a lot of money to them then.
Yeah.
And my grandson said, can I memorize any poem I want? And I'm like, no, you have to memorize this poem. And of course, I wanted them to memorize Mary Oliver's A Summer Day. Who made the bear? Who made the world? What will you do with your precious life? And I wanted them to memorize that poem so that when they are old and it's the summer and I have gone, they're going to wake up and somebody's going to say it's a summer day and they're going to remember the poem.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, maybe that was just kind of me pushing my values on them, but I just wanted them to have that poem embedded in them. I mean, everything, like my grandkids just know that I don't waste stuff. They know that I volunteer and make a difference. I've invited them to do all these things with me through the years. And now they do that themselves. I'll tell you something interesting. So my very sweet granddaughter, I'll go back to grandfathering. So my husband, as a naturalist, taught our grandchildren when they were little toddlers the Latin names of flowers. Because he had this theory. He said, if a person can say ibuprofen, why can't they say coriflora? Why can't they learn the Latin name? So we would take him out on the trail and he would teach them all that. So the other day, our granddaughter texted me and said, she calls Dave, she calls me grandma, but she calls him Nana. The kids, for some reason, called him Nana. So it's Grandma Nana. My husband said he grew up to be his grandmother. So she said, I want to show you something. So she said, I want to talk to you and Nana together. I'm like, oh no, here we go. What's that about? Because, they don't do that now. And then she said, I want to FaceTime you. I'm like, okay. So go on FaceTime. She goes, I want to show you something. She got a tattoo on her chest that goes from here to here. I don't know how you feel about tattoos. We're a little bit old school. We're like, ugh, So she said, the first flower identified, I went ahead and had tattooed right here. So so she has this beautiful tattoo, as tattoos go, of these beautiful flowers and fauna that she just loves. So, who would have thunk that that's how green grandmothering was going to be reflected? But it's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yes. And I think that, I'm just getting my energy is sweeping around this notion of, or this identity of this way of being as a green grandmother, and how we can all, it's about being it, it's about expressing it and doing it, so to speak, so that we're not forcing it upon anybody, upon
No.
younger people, but our own values, our own curiosity about the world around us, the green world, the water, the air, the clouds, the birds, the flowers, whatever it is, the bears, our own curiosity and our own interaction with that pays off when we do it, especially when it's witnessed by our grandchildren, by our great nieces or whatever, our grandnieces and nephews, by our neighbors' kids, by whoever it is. And to me, that really shows the importance of not just being that in our private lives, but being that through and through when we're out, where people can see us and witness us, and maybe see that can have an impact, because everything you're sharing, is about you were being with your grandchildren. You were together, you were being and doing and creating and being curious in different ways, not in the standard, patriarchal ways of, just bizarre values and greed and violence, something else. And so the importance of not just being it when we're by ourselves or in our secure little home environment, but being willing to show it and to find ways to express it when we're out there.
Exactly. You're so right. I'm thinking about grandmothering is about relationships, right?
Yes.
And so, it's really easy when they're little, come sit on my lap, let's read a book. Easy, easy when they're little. As they get older, it's not that easy to connect. And then as they become young adults, they're not thinking about me. My grandkids don't get up in the morning and think about grandma, right? Yeah. And so during COVID, when we didn't have contact, we couldn't see each other, I kept thinking, how can I connect with them? So I just started sending them money. Or if I saw them outside, I'd be like, $20 for you, $20 for you. And they'd be like, Grandma, you don't have to buy our love. And I'm like, I want to make sure you don't forget me. $20 for you. If their friends were there, I gave my husband was like, every time we go visit, that's very expensive. I'm like, I'm just doling out money because teenagers love money, right? So, a little $20 is not going to kill me. And I want to stay connected to them. Now, my young adults, they're both busy in their lives. And I can't expect them to just call and go, hi, Grandma, how is it going? But I'll text them and say, got 5 minutes? And they'll be like, yeah. Or I'll text them and they'll text me right back. All I want is to keep the connection.
Yes.
I know when they're older, and hopefully as I'm older, we'll have more time together. Right now, they're busy. They're doing stuff. They're not thinking about us.
Yeah.
And so it's about cultivating relationships.
Yeah.
And that's part of what we know. That's what ecology is.
Mm.
It's the science of relationships. So we have to adjust our relationships. Whether they recycle at their house, I don't care. I'm not going to ever go into either of their houses and go, do you have your recycle bin set up? No. But if I had the opportunity to go, do I just set up recycles? Or do you have recycles in this place? Or, we might have that conversation. But I have to tell you, all I want, my only goal with my grandkids is for them to say, she loves me so much.
Mm.
That's all I care.
Yeah.
Whether I don't care if I approve of them, their adult choice, who cares?
Yeah.
I just want to be the one that loves them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. And that is so important. It's critical. It's the glue. It's the glue of the universe, the love. So yeah, to actually be love.
Right, right. And love is what love does, not what you say.
Mm, mm,
Right.
yes.
Love is as love does.
Yeah.
Show me you love me, don't tell me you love me.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Wow. Oh, wow. So, I know that, this has given people a lot of food for thought about what it might mean to them to be a grandmother, or to dance with this grandmother energy, to consider what the grandmother archetype might mean to us all as individuals. Because I think one of the main things that I've got from you is that, you might have an idea of what a grandmother is supposed to do or be like, but no, we're not doing that. It's like really being our truth as we embody this energy. And yeah, and so I think that people are going to really want to know more about the work that you do and how they can perhaps find out more about you and your work. And I know that you've got some offerings for them. So would you like to just speak a little bit to those?
Well, I know the summit, asks us to create a continued link for those who feel like they find somebody here that they want to work with or tap into it. And so I do have a link that you're including to some of my music. So before I was a coach, in my early career, when my children were growing up, my husband and I were environmental children's performers, and we did concerts all over the country, and we wrote songs that were environmentally based. And I also have an album of music, collected music mostly, of Earth Chants for Women that I've used with women on retreat. So I sent the link for you to tap into that you can pick up that music anywhere you stream music. It's free. So you're happy to do that. If you're interested in working with me, I did put a reduced fee offer for a short coaching session. If you want to just open the door and explore what could be possible for you around, it doesn't even have to be about grandmothering. It can be about your self-care and how you're showing up in the world, because ultimately that's how we show up as grandmothers. And so that information's in there as well. I'm an executive coach. Most of my clients right now are working on big projects, writing books. I'm working in organizations, leadership. Green leadership is like it's my jam. I love it. But I love working with women on the personal development that is deep rooted and rising toward the sunlight, that full tree spectrum. Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's such a beautiful description. So, everybody, the information and links about both of those are down below here. So, that's where you need to go. You will know if this is speaking to you, if it's whispering to you and you're just thinking, oh, green grandmothering, that sounds just like something I need to explore. Or as Helene said, it could be the self-care aspect. You might feel that you would really appreciate Helene's green grandmothering, shining her light on you and just exploring that together. That might be that might just be the food for your soul, that your soul is saying, yes, please, I would love that. So, do go below, do explore and just see what comes up for you and enjoy it. Oh, wow. Helene, this has been really just beautiful. Just a most wonderful invitation to consider being a grandmother, grandmothering. I like the term grandmothering, actually. I really love this as a way of being, as a verb, but also, that way of being. Naming ourselves as our grandmothering energy. I think that that's a beautiful thing to do, and to do it as you did it, perhaps go outside, whether we've got grandchildren. I'm going to do it. I don't have grandchildren. I don't know if I'll ever have grandchildren. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to go and talk to my big oaks and just ask them for some guidance on this about, I would like to have a name, and so that I can really connect into some sort of, I don't know, different way of being with this energy. So I really want to thank you so much for coming and sharing this wonderful topic and all of your wisdom around this. Thank you so much.
Alison, the next time you meet a child, you could do it with a younger child or any young person, and you introduce yourself. Just call yourself Grandmother Hedgehog. Just try it on to see how it feels, and then try it on to see what their reaction is. Just the low investment, just for experimentation.
Yes, yes. And also that reminds me of what you shared near the beginning of our time together when you said, give your name for your coffee when you're waiting for your coffee as grandma and just see what happens because, it acknowledges grandmas all over. It brings that connection, that instant connection. And we need to be having more of that instant, just recognition, acknowledgement, the the energetic connection, the webs that we're spinning, they are so needed now. So let's step into this.
Can I sing my grandmother's song?
Oh, please do. Yes.
Okay, and anyone who likes this melody, you can steal it and change the words out. And my grandchildren always sang the song because I taught it to them. And there is a point where you have to point to me. So I'll have you participate. You'll know when to point. Okay, here we go. I haven't sang today, so. Who likes to hike all up and down? Who makes pancakes and sleeps on the ground? Who is smart? That's the pointing part. Who is smart? Who is cute? Who's the best grandma that wears red boots? And here's the chorus, and everybody loves to sing it all together. You can just listen. Grandma Wolverine, the best darn grandma you've ever seen.
I love it. I love it. Well, on that note, that very cheerful note, which is it's inviting us. Oh my goodness, I've just had this
It's a G.
realization.
The ending note is a G, just to say.
I've just had a realization that one of the things about grandmothering is it's about engaging with our playfulness, our own playful
It's so
energy.
much fun. It's so much fun. Yeah, it's great.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Helene, for coming and talking with us. And everybody, do remember the links are below here now. That's
Yeah.
really the place to go whilst it's in front of you and you don't have to remember in the middle of the night. It's there now. So do go and explore. And thank you, everyone, for
Alice,
joining us today.
thank you.